are kind of like, now wait a minute, what was that address? So I hope that you can get to it quickly from here, all right? The next sheet of paper in your folder has boxes, looks like this. This is your note capture. This is your piece that if you want to make some notes about yourself, it's not about specific pieces, but it is about kind of key parts and making meaning, kind of looking at it from a broad scope. So there's 5 different questions on here. And what does inquiry standards require me to think about? So it's thinking about that shift in instruction and that shift in practice. And as we go through, these boxes are kind of open-ended, so you can add them to any notes that you have that you want to make meaning about. Add them to this sheet. This allows you to capture your notes. Okay? Okay, there's our website. So I want you to think about inquiry. Now, when I put these things out here about what it is and what it is not, I want you to hear 2 things. Number 1, I have fallen into every single pitfall that I'm going to talk about myself, first and foremost. Number 2, this is not saying what you're doing in class is bad or wrong. So I want you to hear those 2 things very firmly first. Number 3, some of the things that I'm going to talk about here, while they may not be inquiry, it does not mean it's not appropriate someplace in your class. Okay, so just hear those things first. So when we talk about inquiry, it's not a yes or no question. It's not something that Google or Siri can answer for you. Okay? It's not those closed-ended questions. It is important for us to know that students know our material and know what they're getting, but that's not inquiry. Just asking a question is not inquiry. And I thought that. Okay, so I'm just going to put that right out there. It isn't tied to just one resource. Yes, you can use a textbook. Yes, you can use a primary source, but inquiry is when you use those together. When you compare what's being said, when you corroborate information, when you have kids go, oh, wait a minute, that's not what this says, and they get to correct the textbook. That's when your brain goes, woohoo, and goes wild. It is not just asking questions. It includes the students along with us, okay? So, other things it's not. It is not dress-up day. It is not, and this hurts my heart because, I did this. It is not, let's build a timeline or make a sarcophagus or do a board that answers a question. Those are not inquiry. Those are research. Different. 2 different things. Let me give you an example. My favorite lesson to teach what was colonial life like. I love teaching that because I'm a geek about Colonial Williamsburg. I totally love Colonial Williamsburg. I would love to paint my entire house in Colonial Williamsburg colors. My mother does, so true story. I had all kinds of resources and artifacts from Colonial Williamsburg, and I built a lesson about life that students would go from station to station to station to station about learning about different aspects of colonial life. I thought that was inquiry. I thought I've got my artifacts, got my primary sources, they're moving, they're engaged, and then there was a writing prompt at the end where they had to persuade somebody in England about how different life was in America. It was an inquiry. And that stepped on my toes. That's not good. But it could have very easily been turned into inquiry because the guiding question of the whole activity is what was life like in colonial times? Well, could you Google that? Could you Siri that? Yep. Like I said, it stepped on my toes. I thought the writing prompt was great, but students didn't get it. If I had changed my focus to what makes Americans unique, did the same station work with that compelling question as the focus, and then had them write a persuasive letter to a relative back home talking about what makes me unique from you, what makes my British citizenship different from yours. All of a sudden, Siri can't answer that, Google can't answer that. It's a much richer question. So when you're thinking about inquiry, think about what you've already got, what you've already done, that with just a matter of a few tweaks could be a richer lesson for students. What makes Americans unique? Could we use that question today? Absolutely. Could we have used that question during World War II? Absolutely. Could we have used that question with our students, our younger students, when they're talking about their character traits or their characteristics or things about their community? What makes people in Lincoln County unique? It's adaptable for grade level. Okay, so that's one of the first things you need to understand. You can take what you've got and with some easy tweaks, change that. Okay, here's some more. Yeah, I did this one all the time, not inquiry. Just because you had a picture in it, inquiry does not mean doesn't have a place in your classroom. It should have a place in your classroom. Kids need to be doing things like this. But don't think that you're doing this and this is inquiry. Inquiry is very specific. It has a very specific reason for existing within your instructional space. Okay? Like I said, the key elements: questions, tasks, and sources. That's all inquiry is. Inquiry is deep. You got to figure out what's worth investigating. What do kids care about? It's got to be rigorous. It has to be relevant. It doesn't have to be difficult, but it has to be rigorous and it has to be relevant. Inquiry is typically longer than a lesson, but shorter than a unit. Now, that being said, I'm going to show you some different kinds of inquiries that, in my personal opinion, as we start to work with this,
I'm already tearing it up. Pieces are falling off.
oh, it's okay, I'm just teasing you, you know that.
Just so you know, the little handles fall off of the little side thing.
Well, you know, here's the thing, it's, my son helped them put all these together, so I think if he can, they're probably not breakable, but that might be something to let Mr. Guy be done before the kids come in. Huh?
It doesn't appear as though there's anything that makes it.
Those won't last long.
We'll be taking those off. That's what we'll be doing. All right. You also want to make it memorable. You want to make your inquiry experience memorable, so when the kids come back to doing inquiry again, like, oh, that's what we did last time. Or, gosh, I remember that. Or, that was impactful, okay? You gotta have a content angle. So it has to be grounded in content. This is not just something to pull out of the air and say, hey, this is cool. It's gotta be grounded in the standards, in the content. But don't fall down the rabbit hole. Don't pull so many standards with your inquiry that you lose sight of what you want students to do. Okay? And you want it jargon-free. You want it kid-friendly. Okay? You do not need to be using, the words like efficacy and rigor and all. No, those are jargon. You don't want those. Okay? Oh, that didn't show like I wanted it to. All right, let me read this to you. And I'm going to have you guys have a conversation at your table real quick. Young people learn by framing their own questions with or without adult help. Young people also construct their own problem-solving strategies, again, with or without the help of adult assistance. Those questions and problem-solving strategies and the conclusions that young people reach can remain naive, ill-structured, undisciplined, and misleading without intervention by adults. Inquiry is not, let's hand it to the kids and let them figure it out. It is not. So I want you to take a minute with your team, and I want you to kind of discuss this. What parts of this resonate with you? What parts of this are a little scary for you? Go. The distance learning playbook is sitting right there for you to take a look at.
Bring it inside. I was thinking, wow, where? And it was like jeans. Because if we cultivate.
But yeah, you're right, they'll argue the wrong thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask for some volunteers. Who wants to share something that either yourself or one of your teammates stated that resonated with you? What's something that resonates with you, or what's something that's a little scary based on this quote? Oh, come on now, y'all were having some good conversations, somebody, anybody. Go ahead.
We talked a lot about how it's kind of really dependent on how much the students want to participate. And so we'd said, like in the past, we'd had some trouble getting the students kind of to buy into it. And we thought one of the reasons was because it's not something that they're always like exposed to, so they may not be necessarily comfortable with it yet.
Thank you. Great. Anybody else?